Okay, today is about functions. It's the start to functions, and this is about function notation. And so what's different than normal here? It just says f of x instead of saying y equals x squared. It's the same thing. F of x and y can be interchanged. They're just think of f of x just like a y. Okay? The only thing that's more cool about it is that you can say this, f of 3. Whereas try doing that with a y. See what I'm saying? You can say what you're sticking into the function by just putting it like this. How would you do that with a y? You'd have to say y and then like this, y is 3, and that would be like really messy and stuff, but that's what it would mean. Actually, no, it wouldn't. It would mean that x is 3, not that y is 3. So there is no way to make y do that. So this is what's cool about function notation, is you can say what number you're sticking in. All right, so if it says f of 3, do you get that's like f of x, and it's like saying that x is 3? So if I say what's f of 3, well, first of all, I'm not going to use this one because I have the f notation. And then I'm going to do f of 3. And a common mistake people think is that you have to put it in here. You don't. Where do you have to put the 3? On the other side. And so it's just 3 squared. And yes, you can write f of 3. But then some people start thinking that you got to like solve for f or something. No. This is just saying I stuck a 3 in the function. That's all that's saying. And over here's the actual answer, which was 9. Okay? So if I said there's two functions, f of x is this, and g of x is this. Another nice thing about these, if I just used y, do you get how I'd have y equals this and then y equals that, and they would look like they were the same equation, but these are actually different equations? So that's another nice thing about function notation, is it lets you have a bunch of different functions. Because again, if I said y here, and I said y here, it would imply that they are equal to each other. But these functions don't have to be equal to each other. We could force them to be equal to each other if we wanted to, but we can give them different names this way. What you could do if you wanted to use y's, you'd call it y sub 1 and y sub 2. Have you ever seen that before? To separate two different variables from each other, you can use little subscript numbers. Okay? But again, if you're going to use function notation, you're using f of x and g of x. Or you can use q of x. You can know all kinds of things. But the two most common ones are f of x and g of x. All right. And here, let's just see if you've got the idea what's going on. Would you please figure out f of 2 and figure out g of -1? Two completely separate answers. I'll pause for a second while you figure those out. So, f of 2. Could you put the 2 there? Yeah, but you don't really need to. I actually makes me nervous when kids do that, just because then a lot of times I try to solve for the f and divide everything by 2. That's not what you do. Just stick the 2 there. So it's 2 squared is 4. 4 plus 2 makes 6. Raise your hand if you had 6. Good. Then g of x is x over 3, so if I stick in a -1, the -1 goes right here. And then I end up with -1 over 3, and that's it. -1/3. Okay, so where do we go from here? Well, they just do weird combinations of these things. And I think you're going to know what to do when I do this. If I said 3f of 2, what's your gut say to do? Yeah. Divide everything by 3. You're doing the classic solve for f thing. Don't do that. And that is what a lot of people's gut says, because they're going, okay, 3f of 2 equals x squared plus 2, and they try to solve this thing for f. Nope. If I had just done f of 2, just plain f of 2, what did that come out to? We just did it 2 seconds ago. What was it? It was 6. So what do you think the answer is? Yep, 18. So you figure this out first, and f of 2 is something. We know what f of 2 is. It's 6. So I can replace this with a 6, and of course when you put something right next to something else, it means times. 3 times 6 would be 18. All right, so again, I'm glad we're talking this through, because that is the most common thing that people think, is that you would have divided by that. All right, so let's try another one like it. Let's say we had g of x divided by 4, but I'm going to make it g of 3 divided by 4. So how do you think we should start? Find what? G of 3. Just find g of 3. Once you know what g of 3 is, you take it out and put in that thing, whatever g of 3 is. So give that one a try. Figure out g of 3, then stick it in, then get your answer, then compare with the kid next to you. Hint, your answer is a fraction. If you're still lost, it's okay. Where it's really early in the hour. G of 3 is just saying grab this function, the g of x function, and stick in a 3 in it. There, I stuck a 3 where that x used to be. And then it's 3 over 3, which equals 1. So this g of 3 is 1. And now it's 1/4. And that's the answer. 1/4. Raise your hand if you had 1/4. Okay, awesome. So then, here is the more complicated looking kind. I want to take 2f of 3 minus 4. Well, how do you think it should start? Remember, all math is just one step at a time. Okay, so what's the first step? Yes, sir. Yep. Yep. You figure out f of 3. You evaluate 3 in the f function, would be a fancy way to say it. So basically, stick 3 into the f function. Can you do this in your head quick? What do you get? 11. So then it's 2 times 11 minus 4. That's all there is to it. Do you get why we did that, like the PEMDAS thing before? Because now we have to follow the order of operations. And the very first thing you do, you could even say, this has parentheses in it, kind of, doesn't it? And just do those little f things first, replace with whatever answer you get, and then you just got one of these PEMDAS kind of questions. And you just got to make sure you do it in the right order. So 2 times 11 is 22. 22 minus 4, 18. Dollars to it. So here's a typical question. At the end of the assignment, you got a couple functions at the top of the page, and they'll go, okay, so what's 2f of 1 divided by g of 3 minus 4? That would be as complicated as you could possibly get. Okay, so write that one down. And just tell me, one step at a time, what's something I could do that would make this easier? Yes? Find f of 1. Everybody, figure out f of 1. Stick it in your head, and you go, 1 squared plus 2. Did you get 3 for that? Good. So you put 3 there. And now that is not 23, of course. That's 2 times 3 over, and now, one step at a time. What do you think's next? Mr. Fuzzy Slippers. G of x, in this case, g of 3, yes. So I go stick the 3 in here. What did you get? 3 over 3, which is 1. So I put a 1 right there. And now, again, I've got a PEMDAS kind of question. It's 2 times 3 divided by 1 minus 4. That gets done first. When you have fractions, you always do the top first and then the bottom. It actually wouldn't matter if you did the bottom first then the top, but technically, top first is better. So anyway, 2 times 3 is 6 over 1 minus 4 is negative 3. 6 over negative 3. Final answer, I can actually do the divide part because I'm done. Do you know why I started with that? Because that's kind of like a grouping symbol. When you have a big fraction, it groups the top separate from the bottom. So that's like a big parenthesis. So we got done with the parenthesis, we had this, and then we could do 6 divided by negative 3. which is -2. How many of you had -2 before I wrote it? Okay, good. I think you get it. Let's get started on the homework. So, that's all there is to it. I want to pause for a second while I show you where the homework is. Okay, so on this page you will see the assignment says 9/13, which is today's date. And then it's got the one called homework, and right after it's the solutions. Look at that. They're right there. So, should you just copy all the solutions over? Of course not. You're trying to learn this stuff, so you should do them. But if you get stuck, is it okay for you to look over at the solutions? Yes, it is. The idea is to learn from what the teacher did. So if you're like, I'm not really sure I know what I'm doing here, it's okay to look. That's called feedback. You're getting feedback on how you're supposed to do it. All right, so your homework is the thing called homework. And I'm going to open that up. And there we go. This is only a one-pager, and I don't think it's too tough. So let's just start this together here. Number one, f of 7. So you're just going to stick a 7 in the f function. There's the f function. So f of 7 is 3 parentheses 7 minus 4. I do need you to show some work. Do you remember that when we graded homework, which was only happened once so far, because a lot of the other ones are Schoology quizzes, that I checked for showing some work, and that's worth like a point? I know you could have done that in your head and said 21 minus 4 is 17. But if you didn't show any work, you'd have lost 1 point. So just show some work, and then say, I think it's 17? Is it 17? Okay, good. All right. Now, this next one, part B, just got a little trickier, and that's one of the reasons I like to start the homework with you. So, it says x when f of x is 7. Okay, that's confusing. We always just, in the examples we were doing, we always just stuck numbers into the functions. When it says f of x is 7, f of x is right here. Would you agree that that means 3x minus 4, which is what f of x is 7? Does that look like an equation you could solve? See what I mean? And then you'll be able to know what x is. And that's what they want to know. They want to know x when f of x equals 7. So all I did is replace f of x. It says right here that f of x is 3x minus 4. So I just put 3x minus 4 in for f of x. And again, from that, hopefully you know how to solve these two-step equations. Should be like easy peasy. There you go. G of 5, another no-brainer. Over here, g of x is 11. Okay, well, what's g of x? There's g of x. So they're saying that is 11. And then you solve that. So again, g of x is that. Write yourself a new equation, replacing g of x with what it is. And then you solve that equation for x. Here's one of those kinds where you find f of 2, and then you're going to add 7 to it. And there'll be a few at the end that'll stretch you a little bit. That'll be good. What about putting in a nonsense thing like this? Instead of sticking in a number, you're just supposed to stick in negative n. Yeah, just find the g function, which is right here, and it says x squared plus 2, and I like to use an empty parenthesis for the x, so something squared plus 2, and you're just going to drop something in there. Normally you drop in numbers. In this case, you're going to drop in negative n. Yeah, you have to multiply it out and get the final answer, but that's all there is to it. Instead of sticking in a number, stick it in a variable. All right. So that's going to leave us a bunch of work time. So you got your worksheet. You got a key for the worksheet. You got me sitting up here ready to help you. And if there's anything on the top 20, like this would be a time where you could also say, Mr. Server, I still can't get this kind. Can you show me? And I'll be happy to show you. So use your work time well with stuff like that too. And that's all I got for today.